2, number 5, and number 7. So I'm going to go over number 5 and number 7 in this video and 2 additional ones for extra practice. So I've got a box that contains 35 coins in nickels and dimes that tells me that my nickels plus my dimes is equal to 35 coins. Remember that the N stands for the number of nickels and D stands for the number of dimes. Well, I've got some number of nickel and dimes that also adds to $2.50. But in order to come up with $2.50, I have to give values to the nickels and the dimes. So 0.05 nickels plus 0.10 dimes will equal my $2.50. Now I can just solve for one of these variables by moving the other one to the other side of the equal sign and plug it back in. I'm going to decide to solve for dime because I like multiplying by 0.1 better than I like multiplying by 0.05. So I've got dimes equals 35 minus n. So I'm going to just plug this back in when I have my D, so 0.05n plus 0.10, and instead of D I'm going to write 35 minus n equals $2.50. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use the distributive property. I've got 3.5 and 0.10 nickels, and that equals $2.50. And then I'm going to combine my two nickels. So I've got negative 0.05 equals, and I'm going to subtract my 350 from the other side. So I have negative 1. And if I divide by negative 0.05 on both sides, I find that my nickels are 20. So I have 20 nickels, which means that if I add 20 and I have to get to 35, then my dimes must be 15. Well, I'm going to go back and check just to make sure, and I know that 20 nickels equals $1 and 15 dimes equals $1.50. So in fact, I have my $2.50 that I set up there at the top. Okay. So in order to have an equation where I have a value of $15.80, I need to place some values on the numbers of quarters and dimes that I have. So instead of just having the number of quarters, I'm going to have 25-cent quarters. And instead of just having dimes, I'm going to have 10-cent dimes. And those are going to equal $15.80. I also know that I'm going to have between my quarters and my dimes a total of 74 coins. So again, I can solve for Q or for D. I like to use 0.10 because that's easy for mental math. So I'm going to solve for my D. So D equals 74 minus Q, and I'm going to just plug this back in for D. So 0.25 Q plus 0.10 times my D value, which is 74 minus Q. Again, the point is to have only one variable so that I can solve for that and then plug back in to solve for the other. So I've got 0.25 Q plus 7.4 minus 0.10 Q equals $15.80. I'm going to combine my Q's first. 0.15 Q equals, subtracting on this side, I've got $8.40. So my Q dividing by 0.15 will be 56. Okay, and I know that I need to have then 18 dimes to make that 74 coins. And again, I'm going to go back and check. I know that 56 quarters gives me $14, and 18 dimes is $1.80, and that is the $15.80 that I said I had. Okay. Question. Okay, so I do have 3 different coins this time, but I'm going to be able to rewrite this equation so that it only has 1 coin in the end to solve for, and then I can go back and solve for the other 2. So I know I have quarters in my equation, so 0.25 quarters, and I've got pennies, so 0.01 pennies, and then I've got dimes, 0.10 D, and that equals a total value of $8. Then I have to go back and interpret the other 2 equations. This tells me that I've got 5 times as many pennies as quarters. So in order to have the same number of quarters as my pennies, so to have pennies, I would have the same number of pennies, I would have to multiply my quarters by 5 so that I had the same number of coins. Then I also know that I have 12 more dimes than quarters. So for my quarters to equal my dimes, sorry, I'm going to go back and write that for my quarters to equal my dimes, I'm going to have to add 12. Now I've got an equation where I can substitute back in for pennies, written as quarters, and for dimes, also written as quarters. And if you didn't solve it exactly like this, you can move them around so that you can plug back in to only have quarters in your equation. So now I've got 0.25 quarters plus 0.01 times my 5 quarters, that's what I had for the value of pennies, plus 0.10, and instead of dimes, I'm going to write Q plus 12, and all of that will equal 8. Okay, I'm going to go through and very quickly solve this. Add all those quarters together. And I'm going to subtract that $1.20 from the $8, which gives me $6.80. And so dividing by 0.4 on both sides, I know that my quarters, I have 17 quarters. So now I can plug back in my quarters into my equation for dimes or for pennies, but I can plug that back in, so I know that I have 17 plus 12 or 29 dimes, and then I have 5 times as many to get my dimes, so 17 times 5 is 85. And if I go back in, I find that 17 quarters is worth $4.25. 29 dimes is $2.90, and 85 pennies, of course, is 85 cents. Adding all those together, it equals $8. Okay. This one's going to be a little more complicated, but I know that you all can do this. All right, so I've got pennies, dimes, and quarters in a bag, and I know that the total value of that bag is $31.65. So I've got some number of pennies in that bag, each of which is worth 0.01 or 1 cent. I've got some number of dimes worth 10 cents each, and I've got some number of quarters worth 25 cents each. And the total value on that bag is $31.65. Because I have 3 variables, I've got P, D, and Q, I need 3 equations in order to be able to solve. This tells me here that I've got twice as many dimes as I have pennies. Well, if I want to have the same number of pennies as I have dimes, then I'm going to have to double my pennies to have them equal the number of dimes that I have. So double my pennies, that will give me the same number as I have dimes. I also know that there are 13 more quarters than I have dimes. So if I want to know how many quarters, the number of quarters I have, that would equal my dimes plus 13 more. I have 13 more quarters than I have dimes, so I could have taken Q minus 13 equals my dimes, or I'm going to write it as Q equals D plus 13 because in a minute I'll show you why that's going to be easier for us. But you could have absolutely done it a different way. Remember, there are multiple ways to solve by substitution and by elimination. So I'm going to start substituting into my equation, and I know I've got some value of pennies right now. I don't have that solved in any other variable, but I do have my dimes solved in terms of pennies. So I'm going to put in 2p for my dimes. And my quarters, I've got equal to D plus dimes plus 13. Well, remember, so I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. Dimes plus 13, and that equals 31.65. But remember, I have a value for my dimes, so I can actually rewrite that as dimes, remember, is 2p, and then I go back up and include, I'm going to put that in parentheses so I notice that's what I'm substituting for, plus the 13. And so now, going back and rewriting the rest of the equation, you will see that I can solve, I should say, in terms of p. So I've got 0.01p, I've got 0.2p, I've got 0.50p, and 3.25 is my 0.25 times 13, and that all equals 31.65. I'm going to add all my p's together. I've got 71p, 0.71p equals, and I'm going to take my $3.25 away from 31.65, and that's going to be 28.40. And then dividing both sides by 0.71, I know that I have 40 pennies. Now I can go back up and start solving for my other variables. I know that my dimes are twice my number of pennies, so dimes are 80. And then my quarters are my dimes plus 13, so 80 plus 13 is 93. I'm going to double check my work by adding the values of all those. I've got 40 cents worth of pennies, I've got $8 worth of dimes, and 93 quarters is $23.25. And in fact, that gives me $31.65. So I said at the outset of this video, I would expect you to be able to answer questions like number 1, number 2, number 5, and number 7. Numbers 8 and 9 are good practice, but they're a little more complicated than I would expect to ask you on a quiz or on a test. So good luck on your quiz tomorrow. I will see you then.